Hi, everyone, and welcome to Life Edge, because life just doesn't have to be mediocre. I'm Harold Muliati, and this is my co-host, Dr. Susan Nash. How are you, Susan?
Great. It's so great. So happy to have Tawni Waters on our show with us today, too. It's just a wonderful, refreshing change because we have an artist. I think it's perhaps our first artist on the show.
Oh,
All
I'm
right.
very honored to be here.
Well, sorry, Tiny. Let's run our intro, and we'll get started.
All right.
This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation at www.relate.com, your training and video partner.
And we're back. We've got world traveler, educator, and poet Tawni Waters on today. How are you doing, Tawni?
I'm wonderful, thank you. How are you?
We're excellent. So, how did you get started with poetry, Tawni?
Poetry is actually my second love. I'm actually a fiction writer. I have two novels out. I brought all my books here. I have two novels, Beauty of the Broken and The Long Ride Home. And I studied fiction writing in my master's program. And I've always been in love with that. And I started writing poetry sort of as a journaling kind of thing. I didn't think my poems were any good. And I was actually at a party with a woman who was the editor of a magazine, and she was really in need of some poetry. And she asked me if I'd ever written any poems, and I said, "Well, yeah, but they kind of suck." And she said, "Well, will you show them to me?" And so I sent her one of my poems, and she loved it, and she ended up publishing it. And then we developed a relationship. We already were friends, but we developed a professional relationship, and she kept asking me for poems, and I had hundreds of poems I've written. So I would just send her poems, and she would publish them. And she finally said, "How many of these do you have?" And I said, a lot, like hundreds. She said, "Well, I think they're amazing. Can we publish a book of your poems?" And so that was how this book came to be. That was my first book of poetry, Siren Song. And then I've just written and published poetry since then. And I sort of write hybrid. So Speaking Stars, my most recent collection, is definitely a marrying of prose and poetry because I can't decide which one I like better. So yeah, I guess it just happened by accident, really.
I'm just so excited about that, and I think that the titles are very intriguing about in your books and your novels, and so I'd like to know a little bit more about what exactly is the plot and what were your concerns in your two novels, especially the one, was it the Journey of the Broken?
The Beauty of the Broken?
The Beauty of the
yeah, Beauty
Broken,
of the Broken.
even better.
Yeah, that one was my first novel I'd ever published, and it took me over 10 years to write it. And it's about a young woman named Mara. I'm here in New Mexico where I grew up right now, and she's in a fictional town in New Mexico, a very conservative town, and she comes to realize that she's a lesbian and she's in love with her best friend. And so it's sort of the process that she goes through to discover who she is and also stand up against the bigotry in her town. And it's very, very close to my heart. It won the ILA, which is one of the biggest awards for young adult literature there is. And I love it. It's my baby.
That's wonderful. So which part of New Mexico? Because I've spent some time in New Mexico, and I just find it to be a really unique culture, especially like Southwest New Mexico, like Silver City, and then also in the Northeast. I mean, they're very different, but
yes. Yeah, I love this place. I have spent the last 5 years traveling, and I've actually traveled for the last 20 years, but 5 years I've lived on the road fully. So I've traveled most of the world, and I am deeply in love with New Mexico. It's the kind of beauty I love. I love desert beauty. I love the starkness of it. I love the courage of the plants that they have to like really fight to survive. It's a landscape of courage, I think. But I live outside of Albuquerque, about 40 miles
Okay.
east of Albuquerque, in a little town no one's
Okay.
ever heard of called.
What is the name of it? Oh, you don't have to tell us. But it's like I know Las Vegas and that area.
Yeah, it's Cedar Grove, and nobody's ever heard of it. When it wasn't even actually a town when I moved up here when I was 4, and there was one other family on the mountain that we lived on. So we were incredibly isolated. It was beautiful. I had amazing parents, and they were hippies, hippie preachers. I'm actually here in my family's church because there is no internet on the mountain where I live, or there's very bad internet. So I came down here to get good internet. So my family built this church, and I was raised out here.
I just love the colors of New Mexico, like the yellows, and especially in the fall, the bright golds and yellows. And anyway,
me too. I find that so beautiful. I love Arizona as well. I lived there for a while, and the colors of the red rock there and the purple plants. I just find those colors to be astonishing. And there are other places that are much more generous with their colors, I think. Like I just was going to start teaching in an MFA program in Philadelphia, so I was living there. I got ill, so I had to come home. But that is such a lush landscape, and I appreciate that. But it's easy. It feels like those plants just here. I don't know. They got to fight for what they get.
Those plants don't know how good they have it, right?
Right. They don't. They need to visit New Mexico, then they'll find out.
Well, so what's interesting to me, okay, and Harold, I'm interested in your thoughts too, but I think that like right now with so many artists and the kind of issues of I don't know, like the tensions with the mass killings and all that, and then sometimes connections to alternative art. I just wonder what your thoughts are about art and expression in dangerous times.
I actually teach a workshop pretty often at various conferences called Writing as an Act of Love, Writing to Save the World. And I truly believe, because art has the power to change hearts, that it is even more powerful than political expression. And I always encourage my students to use their art to speak out against oppression and to speak out for what they believe in. I think that really art has the power to give hope and to bring light in the dark, dark, dark times. And I think I've only been alive for 47 years, but this is for certain the darkest time I've ever seen in America. So I think we need art more than ever before.
And I kind of feel as, you know, as an artist, as a painter, and all that sort of stuff that I do, I kind of feel that art, you know, I do think that it's great that people can, you know, consume art or appreciate art and get some sort of comfort or some kind of feel some kind of support from art. I almost feel that a lot of the ideological content, and you know, I'm speaking, I guess, probably more for visual art because I'm not much of a writer. I mostly do visual art. I feel that the people who come across the art and appreciate it, they almost put more meaning to it sometimes than the artists themselves. Like plenty of people would disagree with me on that, but I feel like for myself, I usually just put feelings into art, and you know, a lot of the rest of it I kind of leave up to other people. I don't know. That's that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's quite interesting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Susan.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, that's that whole big argument about like, okay, it doesn't really matter what the artist's intent was. What really matters is like what it is in the viewer's mind. Anyway, I have some other thoughts, so go ahead, because I'm interested in what you had to say, Tawni.
Oh, I think art, I always I keep talking about my teaching, but I do it all the time. So it's always in the forefront of my mind. But I always tell my students that art isn't a monologue, it's a conversation. And so I do
Yeah.
believe that the beauty of it is that we produce something, yes, we have something we want to say, but somebody else takes it and they weave our expression into their own experiences. And it does become something different for them, but it's something that changes and moves them. So it's almost a marrying of souls. And I find
Hmm.
that to be really beautiful. I don't need people to read my art the way I meant it to be read. I would rather they read it in a way that is meaningful to them. And I'm sure you feel that way about your visual. I don't know.
I,
I'm don't
I
read yours,
think that's
but
really
it sounds
key.
like
What
you feel that
what
way.
you said, that it's a conversation. It's creating art. It's just kind of it's it's adding an entry into the collective consciousness, and once it's out there, you the artist, you can say stuff about it, you can describe it, but it doesn't just. I think once you've put it out there, it doesn't just belong to you. Intellectual property laws aside, but it doesn't just belong to you. It's the other people, everyone else who's experiencing it. They're adding their own. I don't know if I would say essence or spin to it as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And that's what I love about art. I mean, if you hear a song or see a painting or read a book that like resonates with your personal experience and somehow gives you some sort of insight into who you are and the meaning of your life, I think that's one of the most beautiful things art has to offer.
Yes.
Okay, but so I have some other questions though. Okay, so how about, okay, in the case of, and I don't want to like go into too much about some of the issues of the mass killings, but supposedly the person in Dayton was involved in a sort of subgroup of art that and music and performance that had to do with mutilating and women and sexual assault. And okay, so he immediately, like the people that were in that band, immediately erased everything, deleted everything, etc. And I can understand. But what about that type of expression? I mean, in a free society, what do we do?
That's a really tough question. I'm not going to give you an off the cuff answer because I don't think I have a good one. I wrestle with that. I believe absolutely in freedom of speech. And I think that once we start taking away people's freedom of speech, we're on a slippery slope. And yet, when people are doing these kinds of things that you're talking about and bringing hate speech to the table and causing violence, I wish I had an answer. I don't know what to do about that. It horrifies me that art is used in that way.
Yeah. I mean, really, it is a tough question because it's like you said. It's without really infringing on everyone else's freedom of speech. It's hard to really do something. I tend to think that just any kind of art should be out there, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure when it's actually causing harm. I'm not really sure what the solution or what, if anything, should be done or what should be done.
I know it's so difficult because, I mean, if it's about shocking in order to, whatever, it's, people think it's funny and it's parodic and stuff, but like, and some people might see the joke, but others would say, ugh, in a fragile mind, they take it literally and act on it. I mean, there's that issue. And then there's the issue of, okay, but what if it's a repressive society and there's an actual level of reacting and trying to correct what seems to be a horrible situation. I'm not saying that art would do that, but I just find it to be really, really awkward and uncomfortable. And I don't know what to say about it either.
I mean, ultimately, I kind of feel like people seek out art that seek out art that speaks to what they're feeling inside. So I don't so much subscribe to the thing that art can really incite people to do things. I think that if they're already in that direction, they'll seek out things like that. They'll seek out things that resonate with things that are inside them. Like, for example, if there was, art that deals with suicide and stuff like that, I think that, people might say, well, these things drove such and such person to finally go off the edge. But I don't know if that's really true. I almost think that they were just seeking out those things to try to help themselves process what was already going on inside. And as to what the actual effect is, I'm not sure.
Right. I think I agree with that. I don't think that a piece of art, unless you are very, very, very close to the edge already, could push you off of it. And even if you didn't have the piece of art, if you were that close to the edge, I think probably something else would push you off the edge. But it still does bother me. I hear some of the lyrics in songs and some of the more aggressive songs about raping women or whatever, and they horrify me. And I wish there wasn't that kind of art in the world. But do I want to say that nobody can write it? I don't think that I do. I don't think that.
As as human beings, I don't think we're ever going to be able to get out of the fact that we have like the Thanatos dark side. I mean, I was thinking of Flannery O'Connor's book that she wrote, I think in the 50s, Wise Blood, and I was thinking that's an example of Christian behaviors being pushed into flagellations, hair shirts, walking around with in shoes of broken glass, mortification of the flesh, and there's certainly been that, and of course the goal is to like purify. So maybe you could say, okay, it was better because it was purifying, but there's another side to it.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a hard issue to come up against. It's hard to. I wish like I said, I had an answer. I don't. It's scary to think that people can produce art that makes people hurt people. That's horrifying. I don't know.
I don't think it actually does that. It's up to the person, and they've had that in their mind anyway, and so
that's true. Yeah, and I think that there's also, even though we can't put political pressure on those people, I think we can put social pressure on them. I mean, just because you have freedom of speech doesn't mean people aren't going to think you're an asshole because you said what you said. So I think there is that. I mean, I think that there can be public outcry against these things, even if we're not outlawing it. We're saying we don't accept this, and we don't accept you because of what you're saying. So maybe rethink this.
I like that.
And I think also it's the other thing that's always important is conversation. When people are causing problems, when people are doing terrible things, what is it that's causing them to do this? Maybe there's something else. I feel like someone who's happy in their life, they don't do all these terrible things. There's something else, and maybe there are other ways around it to solve problems for them, or help them see things in a different way that just kind of
Well, I can't believe I'm about to admit this. Yeah, but like years ago when I was working on my dissertation, which is on apocalypse, it spawned this evil twin and also this evil triplet. And so I would be like Yeats or Fernando Pessoa, and I would like channel these really disturbed people and write as though I were in that mindset, kind of like dramatic monologue. But it would be, they were creepy people like Fatty Arbuckle.
Wow.
And so now, so then it was interesting. I look back and go, ooh, that was intense. But then I started doing a lot of really boring e-learning things. so that I would overwhelm anything that if anybody might find it in there.
And that's another interesting point about relating to art and especially writing, is that nowadays, because of the way the internet works, the stuff you do doesn't go away. It's even if you thought you got rid of something, it's probably still out there. It's out on some NSA server or something. Maybe no one's going to look at it for... well,
Right.
Everything gets recorded somehow, pretty much.
Thank you, Harold.
Terrifying.
Which is maybe good for the voyeuristic of us, but for the rest of it, it's weird. It's creepy.
Yeah, it is. And when you see yourself improving through time, your art, when you guys asked me to see some of my writing that I had done, a bunch of my writing now is either in print or in print-only magazines. So I was going back to some of my online stuff I did in my early career, and I was like, holy crap, I've gotten so much better. I wish I could have written that, but it's out there for good, so.
Oh, well, that's all a matter of somebody in the future will say, oh, the early work of Tawni Waters was absolutely brilliant. It was minimalist or whatever, whatever it was.
Yeah.
A girl can dream, right?
Well,
so did you bring any, so you sent some visual art for us to share. I don't know.
I did.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. We've got... there were two that you sent. One was called Overlooked, and one is called 1400 Montgomery Avenue. Which one of those should I pull up?
Would you like me to read one?
Sure.
1400 Montgomery Avenue is one of my favorites. My daughter, I wrote the poem. I was writer in residence at Rosemont College in Philadelphia, and its address is 1400 Montgomery Avenue. And I was living, they have this gorgeous, it's a castle, and it's an old mansion, but it looks like a castle, and it's at the center of the campus, and it's huge. It's like 20,000 square feet. And I was living there by myself, and there are rumors that it's haunted, and I believed in ghosts, so I was terrified all the time. And I was in there alone at night, and I was right across from a dorm, and these boys would come out at night and smoke cigarettes and scream and dance and whatever. So I had like this imaginary relationship with these boys, like friendship with them, because they were the only people that were there. So I wrote this poem about them, and my daughter beautifully illustrated it. I don't know if do you have the illustrations to pull up? If not, I can.
We have this page.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Oh, you got it. Okay. Yeah, Desiree Wade is my daughter. She's a brilliant graphic novelist, and she agreed to work with me on this book, which I am so honored by. So this is one of the poems that she illustrated. She is. This is the miracle tree in which I have built my nest for now. I sleep here, absorbing stars, drinking moonlight. My thighs talk in tongues. My toes telegraph messages to the universe, who answers back in the language of crickets and punk rock boys. They listen to rap outside my window, smoking cigarettes and saying, "Come here, honey. Can't you see? You don't want to miss this. Our orange hair is on fire." And I actually wrote that. I felt it was a loving gesture from these boys. My daughter thought it was antagonistic, so her drawings are a bit more antagonistic. So that goes back to what we were saying about art changing when it gets into the mind of someone else. But I love what she did with it. I think her illustrations are just gorgeous.
Oh, they're amazing. I mean, she's such a nice, and to make a graphic novel of it, just like, oh, I love it.
I do too. It's wonderful. We want to do a whole book of, because she only illustrated 3 poems in this, but we want to do a whole book, a whole graphic novel poetry collection. So hopefully that'll be in the works soon.
That would be great.
So would you like to read the other one?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
The other one we have here is Overlooked.
Yes, Overlooked. This was only Desi. I adore my daughter, so I may be a proud mama, but only my daughter can make a poem about cockroaches, worms, and rats beautiful. and she managed to do that. I actually gave her this. This book is divided into 3 sections, and I gave her poems for each section that I wanted her to draw. But this was the one that I really wanted her to draw, but I was like, she's not going to want to draw cockroaches and worms. So I gave her like 3 other options, and she was like, no, I love it, Mom, we'll do this. And she did it beautifully. So this is called Overlooked. Why does no one write the poem about cockroaches skittering over stone? Their intricate wings shimmering like polished topaz in the moonlight. Where are all the odes to sewer rats? What has become of the haikus written in honor of the noble earthworm? Pink and supple, he emerges from winter's white, hungry for sweet soil. I wrote that because thank you. I was thinking about. Oh, thank you. We write poems about the beautiful things, but we never write poems about the ugly things. So I wanted to do a little poem for the overlooked subject.
It's so beautiful in the way that she made the cute rats. I mean, it's not like a Dostoevsky thing. It's more like they're really adorable.
They are. Well, my daughter had 3 rats. She owned rats for several years. They all passed away, but she loves rats. So I think she was really excited to be able to draw rats in a loving way, because she was very angry at the way rats were treated. She was really angry about the oppression of rats. So I think that's her statement on that.
Well, she did so like cuddly.
She did, didn't she? Even the roach is kind of cute. I do not like roaches, so.
Yeah. Polished topaz. Yeah, I had never really thought of a cockroach like that. That's nice.
Well, I don't usually think of them like that. I think I'm an insomniac. I think that came after like 3 days of not sleeping or something. Then the roach was pretty. Not on a good day is a roach pretty.
Wow. I mean, yeah, really, cockroaches are nice-looking animals. It's just that when you think of something as dirty, that's the problem. Is people think of them as dirty, so they don't.
They are.
You don't pay attention to them. Well, I mean, people keep pet cockroaches, and those aren't necessarily going to be dirty. But yeah, I guess if you just find a cockroach in your kitchen.
Yeah. No, I have to be honest. I do not want to keep any cockroaches for pets. I try not to kill anything, but I kill cockroaches.
So do you name your cockroach Grigor?
From I remember the name of the story referring to.
Metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis. Thank you. I was going to say transformation, but I'm like, no, that is not what it is. Okay, if I could name it that, I might have a pet cockroach.
Yeah, it would be good to have maybe a monosyllabic name, like, I don't know, Sal the cockroach.
Sal. How could you be opposed to Sal the cockroach? You almost gotta love him, right? I might have to write a poem about Sal the cockroach now.
It occurred to me though that I think a lot of people give cockroaches a monosyllabic name. They call them "eh." Bad joke, sorry, but
I like it. I used to be a kindergarten teacher, and I love jokes that would work for little kids. So you just
So what are your plans for the future?
Oh, well, my future just got a little rerouted. So right now, I've just come back from, as I said, I was going to teach in Philadelphia. I had already moved there. I was going to teach in the Rosemont College MFA program and also teach at the Rosemont College Writers Studio, and I got really sick. I came close to dying. So I'm home. And right now, I've started working on a new poetry collection and a novel. I have 100 pages of a novel that I got the idea for just before I got sick. So it sort of feels, I'm sad not to be at Rosemont. I have to be honest. It's been one of my heart's homes since I started being there, and I go back and forth all the time. So I was really excited to be able to be there full time. But it feels right. It feels like I'm supposed to be here now, and I'm supposed to focus on this novel and get it out there. It's actually a political novel. It's one of the first overtly political novels I've written. So I kind of want it to come out before Trump gets a chance to be reelected, so I can put my 2 cents in. So it's called Keeper of the Book, and I feel like I'm supposed to be focusing on it right now. So that's what I'm going to do.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I mean, I agree that sometimes there are pivotal moments where you're forced to look at your legacy, your mission, and just the bigger picture, and
Right.
whatever that might be.
Right. And this did feel that I don't mean to get all deep on you or too personal, but I would have never planned this. I was very excited about this job, but the whole process, I was very sick for several weeks, and um, I came out the other end of it feeling really, really grounded and really peaceful and incredibly grateful for the life that I still have and the sanity that I still have. Because I'll tell you what actually happened to me was I had been given Xanax because I'm an insomniac for sleep, and I was not told that it can be deadly to go off of it cold turkey. And I started having chest pain, and my father died of a heart attack, and my brother had 2 heart attacks last year, so I'm very afraid of heart disease. So I thought it was the Xanax, and I was like, well, I'll just stop taking it. And I ended up having horrible, horrible physical and mental um, withdrawal symptoms, and ended up in the hospital twice. And it was very scary. There was
Oh
times I didn't
no! I'm so glad it worked out. That is very scary.
It was
Wow.
terrifying, and I encourage people not to take Xanax. I will never. I'm titrating off now with the help of a doctor, and you can see I'm much better. But it was very scary, and I came out of the other end of it just with strangely, you would think it would destroy me, that the experience that I went through, but it's given me a whole new lease on life, and I'm grateful to be back here with my family. I'm incredibly close to my family. My children live here. I'm grateful to have this time to focus on my art. And I do feel like whatever the reason for this rerouting, there was a reason, and I'm in exactly the right place. So I guess that's my little personal input for the day.
Wow. Well, that's like Julian of Norwich, a little bit, and Marjorie Kempe and some of the medieval mystics. They all went through. They just almost died, and it transformed them like forever. They came out.
Right.
Yeah. So it seems
Yeah.
very similar.
Yeah, it felt that way actually, and I wasn't going to talk to anybody about the stuff that had happened to me, and it's hard not to talk about it because it really was transformative. But I have been living on the road for 5 years because I really wanted to find truth, and I was really, really meditating all the time and seeking and trying to find peace, and I didn't just want superficial. I wanted something really true and deep. And as strange as this was, I went through a process of transformation while I was living up on the road, and I was writing more about it. And everyone asked me if I kept asking if I'd finished it, and I was like, well, the end hasn't happened yet. I don't know what the end is. I knew the end was coming, and I lived the end, and I this was really radically transforming, and it was what I was looking for. As painful and as excruciating as it was, I came out the other end. I feel like a very different person than I was, and I don't have the fear that I had. I don't have the shame that I had. I don't have the sadness that I had. So yeah, it was a mystical experience. It changed me, and I'm
Wow.
strangely grateful for it. So yeah.
Yeah. There's a book, Evelyn Underhill, mysticism, and one of the chapters talks about the dark night of the soul. I mean, that sounds exactly like what you went through.
Right. And it was, I thought I'd had a dark night of the soul before, but man, I had not. I didn't know really what that meant. And I actually, when I ended up in the hospital, I'd been sick in bed for a week, and throwing up and throwing up, and I hadn't slept for 7 days, and I'm very physically ill and dehydrated. And I started a psychotic episode. That was the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me, because my mind was betraying me. And I've always relied on my mind. I've always been very intelligent and gotten great grades and been very together, and to have my mind start to go, that my two biggest fears were death and insanity, and they both started to happen. And I thought they were going to happen when I got taken to the hospital in an ambulance. I thought, I felt my mind break. I mean, it had been going for hours, and I just felt the snap. I thought, I'm never coming back from this. I'm never coming back. And I, in the middle of the psychotic episode, I posted a bunch of misspelled weird stuff on Facebook, and I was cognizant enough to know that I humiliated myself. And so I was thinking everybody's going to hate me. Everybody's going to think I was crazy. That's what I thought. I thought that if you go crazy, everybody hates you. And I got to the hospital, and I was just surrounded with so much love, and people were so generous. And all of my friends that saw the post were writing me letters and checking on me and saying, "Are you okay?" And I had more love poured on me during that experience than I'd ever had in my life. So that took part of the fear away. And then as I got physically better, and then gave me something to sleep. Part of what was happening was the exhaustion, not sleeping for 7 days. I came back out the other end, and I survived it. So it was amazing. And I did actually not go right back on the Xanax because I was stupid and I thought I'd gotten through the withdrawal. So I actually ended up in the hospital again. But after I got out of the hospital the second time, I went back on the Xanax, and now I'm working with a doctor. So yeah, but it changed me. It changed me forever.
Wow.
And I'm grateful.
Well, I'm just really, really glad that you made it, and also really, really glad that you're willing to talk about it, and also continue to write and just do what your life's vision and mission lead you to do.
Well, thank you. You know, I wasn't going to talk about it because mental illness has a stigma attached to it, right? And I had psychotic episodes. And so I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? There is no more shame in this than there is in the throwing up or the migraines, the other physical symptoms that were happening to me. My brain was dying, and that's why that happened to me. And it gives me so much compassion for people who have to live with this every day. I was so lucky. It makes me want to cry because I got to take a pill and it went away. There are people who have problems with their brain chemistry that have to live with that every day. And I said on my Facebook, because I've been talking openly about it, they're my heroes now. They face this every day, and they go out there and they live their lives, and they are brave and courageous and keep the faith. I don't know if I could have kept the faith if that had lasted more than a few days for me. So I admire them, and I feel like I owe it to the people that suffer from mental illness on a regular basis to be honest about this. There is no shame in what happened to me. There were some people who did treat me like it was shameful, and I refuse to be ashamed because it was a physical thing, and it's something that happens to a lot of people, and I think we need that compassion.
So true. So true. And I often think too, it often hits people when they're like 17, 18, 20. And so they've been like known themselves as normal, and then boom, suddenly they're not. And it's like forever. And it's so sad. And so many people who are homeless, they're not the problem with drugs. It's mental illness that's not getting helped.
It's not, and there is stigma associated with it, and it really is. I mean, I know because it happened to me because of physical that were happening in my body. It's a physical problem, and we need to have the same compassion we would have for somebody with cancer or for somebody that has a cold. It's a physical thing, and if we can find ways to help people, that's so much better than stigmatizing people who are suffering this way. I actually have a cousin, and this has given me so much gratitude. He's schizophrenic, and we were very close when we were children, and he's still a beautiful man, but he's schizophrenic. He had a psychotic break 10 years ago, and he never recovered, and I didn't know how the schizophrenic break had happened, but I found out it was exactly what happened to me. He was withdrawing from over or from drugs that had been prescribed to him by a doctor, and he tried to do it cold turkey, and he had a psychotic break, and he
Wow.
never came back. So I feel so lucky to be here and to be sane and to be alive. I have more gratitude for my existence and my sanity and my mind than I've ever had. And I want to use the time that I feel like my life was given back to me. And I want to use the time to love the world. I just want to love people with my writing and with my existence.
It's great.
Thank you. I keep telling people I'm not going to talk about this, and then I do. And I wasn't going to talk about it on the show, and here I am. Sorry, it's just so close to the forefront of my mind right now because it just happened. It's hard to pretend that it didn't.
We pried it out of you.
Yeah.
It's not your fault.
Yeah. I think I just like, here, you can have it.
Well, this has been such an interesting conversation, though. It's been great.
Yeah, I've loved it.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. It feels very like real. I don't like it when an interview feels like people are just playing, and it feels like we're having really true, deep conversations. So thank you for having me. It's been very cool.
Oh, no, thank you.
Thank you. And
Oh,
before we
my honor.
before we end, we have, well, we may have already covered this, but we have one question that we always ask our guests here on Life Edge, and that, Tawni, is, what would you say is the one thing in life that has given you an edge?
One thing in life that has given me an edge. Love. I
Oh, no.
have been loved deeply and profoundly by some of the most beautiful people in the world, starting with my parents and my brother, and moving on to some of the people that have been in my life as an adult, my children, the great love of my life, some of my close friends, my sister Penny. I've been loved, and it made me a person who could survive things that I think people that are unloved cannot survive. So love has given me an edge.
It's wonderful.
Thank you. I feel very
Well, I
lucky.
hope we can have you. Yeah, so I hope that we can have you back on the show sometime. And in the meantime, I will put links to your work and contact information with the show notes. And just want to thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And it was wonderful to meet both of you, sort of cyber meet you.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you, everyone out there who's watching this show, for joining in. And we'll see you next time on Life Edge. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.